Welcome to Empire State Development's Division of Minority and Women's Business Development, MWBE Training Tuesdays webinar series. Today's webinar topic is Building Your Brand Online with Company Websites. My name is Caitlin Covert, Business Development Associate at Empire State Development. I have a wonderful guest for everyone today. Ryan Miller, the Director of the ThINCubator at Mohawk Valley Community College. However, before we begin, let's take care of some housekeeping issues. We have already muted your phone, so participants do not hear a lot of background noise during the presentation. This webinar is being recorded, and the PowerPoint presentation, as well as the recording, will be emailed to all registrants. We encourage you to ask questions through the chat and Q&A boxes. And lastly, there will be a short survey that will pop up on your screen, which will take 5 minutes or less to fill out. We would very much appreciate your feedback. And without further ado, I introduce you to Ryan Miller.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for being here, wherever you are. If you guys have questions throughout, be sure to use the chat. I'll try to get to as many of them as we can. It's kind of weird speaking into the ether. I feel like I'm on the radio or something. I've been living in Zoom for the past 3 months. So I'll do my best to pretend like we're having a dialogue here. So I'm very grateful that you're all here. And I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. So I hope that this gives you kind of a top level overview of the way that I go about thinking about websites when working with startups, and also some tactical places to start wherever you are in that process. So let's see, give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm the director of MVCC's ThINCubator in Utica, New York, and we are an incubator / accelerator, and our local SBDC is housed within the building as well. Been doing that for about 5 years, and have worked with over 200 entrepreneurs during that time. I would say most of our businesses are small business. They're folks that are coming in with an idea, or they've kind of had their side hustle that they're looking to kind of pull into a full-time career or a job. And so I've seen all different kinds of businesses come through the doors, and so that's what I do with most of my time, is kind of consult and advise and assist folks as they're on their entrepreneurial journey. Besides that, I started what started as a podcast. It was called Rust Belt Startup, and it continues. If you're interested, you can listen to Rust Belt Startup on any podcast player of your choice. And it was really designed to be long-form conversations with entrepreneurs, educators, and artists, people that are living unconventional lives in unconventional locations. And that kind of evolved into kind of a company, because what I realized was my background is in marketing, website development, media, particularly digital media and digital storytelling, was that there's a gap. And there are a lot of companies that need assistance when it comes to these digital services, from a person or a company that's maybe not at the agency level, but they're not at the level of their cousin Timmy either. And I'll get back to cousin Timmy in a little bit. So a little bit about me, and I'll have my contact information readily available for everybody. So let's talk about websites. At its core, it kind of used to be the one-stop shop for your company, but I'm thinking about it in a little bit of a different way now. And I've been doing websites for close to probably 20 years now, everything from just coding things in Notepad and HTML, now using a lot of different tools that I'll go over today. And so I've seen a wide breadth of different tools to get websites actually active, and I'll give you some of the pros and cons of those as we go. But at the end of the day, your website is, in some ways, it's a business card. It's a home base. It's a first impression. And so what I'm going to do today is hopefully take you through and answer some of these questions that are big picture, but also really dig a little bit deeper without going too deep into the tech. But you'll have some takeaways about where you can start, whether you're looking to do a DIY site, whether you're looking to hire a freelancer, an agency. Hopefully I'll be able to give you some of the things that you should be thinking about right from the get-go to see if it's a match, and to make sure that if you're making an investment in retooling or building your first website, that it really has a lot of value for you and your company. So we're going to break it down into the good old why, who, what, and how. And let's first start with why. Basically, why do you need a website? And I'll see a lot of folks that will use Facebook as their website, so to speak. And I think at its core, it can be something as simple as just having your basic contact info. But I think about your website as real estate. It's a digital real. It's real estate. In fact, I have two kids, and when my kids were born, one of the first things I did was actually bought their names as .coms. And there's not a website there. I just want them to own that little piece of real estate. But it's a jumping off point for folks. I think, as much as we're conditioned to use social media, having a basic web presence to me is demonstrates a core competency and at least a modicum degree of care in the way that you present your brand. So having that piece of digital real estate, I think, is really important. And it doesn't need to be fancy. I think just having something there that is going to give your user, your customer, a potential customer, a sense of who you are, what you do, how you do it, is still very, very important. That is not to poo-poo any of these other platforms. I think it's very important, depending on your business, to make sure that you are, have a presence on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm not going to cover that today. I want to stick mostly to the web because that's a little bit more situational. But again, it's your home base. This is a jumping off point. So if you do have a great presence on social media, is to get people to land and then redirect them based on their needs. So I think it's really important to figure out for your companies, look, why do you want one? Do you really need one? And how in depth does this website need to be? I think sometimes people really overthink the complexity of it when at its core, you really just need something basic. Let's spend a little bit of time on who. So one of the exercises that I use with a lot of my entrepreneurs when we're going through a marketing conversation is, if we were going to buy a full page ad in the New York Times and we had to sell this shoe, what would be the headline that would go under the shoe? This would normally be the part where I'd ask for some headlines, but since I can't hear you guys, we'll kind of plow through it. So a headline might be, the perfect shoe for a night on the town, hell on heels. You name your cliche, right? We can sit here and we can come up with headlines all day long to try to sell the shoe. We get one shot at it. And you guys may have slogans or taglines or kind of mission statements around your business. But what I want you to do, and this is how it relates to your web presence and your brand in general, is we can come up with these headlines with the only context that we have, which is the shoe. And we're bringing our biases and our preferences into those headlines. But what happens if I ask you to create a headline to sell the shoe to the oldest woman in this picture, the grandmother? Right? That headline's going to completely change. That headline might be shoes to make you feel 20 years younger. And then what if I said, can you write a headline to sell it to the youngest woman on the page? And that headline might be shoes your dad will hate. Right? So it's the same product, but depending on who our customer is, who we're speaking to, we need to think about how we're going to communicate our message in a completely unique way. And so as you're going through your website development process, really understanding who are you talking to should be really at the forefront. And it should really be about that user, about that customer. How do they like to be spoken to? Do they require a lot of verbiage? Are they more visual? Do they want to read white papers? Are they technologically savvy? Are they not? Are they typically browsing your site on a phone or a tablet or a desktop or a notebook? Trying to think about getting into your customer's head and presenting your website in a way that's going to appeal to them is going to be super important. Because at the end of the day, and I'll harp on this for the entire presentation, you're in the trust business. We need to get people to trust you. And a website is that piece of real estate where they can look at it. They should be able to understand not only what you do, but who you are, how you do it. They should be able to get some of that trust from you. And the communication style is super, super key. I also think it's okay to understand that you're not for everybody. Figure out who your best customers are, the customers that you really want, and make sure that the visuals speak to them and that the copy is written in their vernacular. Wish there was a thumbs up or something. If you guys could let me know if you're still with me, okay? let's keep going. What? This seems really simple, right? But sometimes this is something that gets kind of lost in the sauce when I'm working with clients, right? What do you want your customer to do when they get to your website? What do you want them to do? Right? Do you want them to contact you? Do you want them to just learn more about what you do? Are you doing conveying expertise? Do you want them to walk away going, "Wow, this firm really knows what they're talking about. They are the expert in this particular field." Or do you want them to transact? Do you want them to make a purchase? And it could be a combination of those things. But clearly visualizing and frankly articulating, leading that user down the path that you want them to lead is going to be really important. So I've worked with clients that just have a ton of stuff up on their website. It's not really clear what I'm supposed to do with that as a user. Am I supposed to contact them? How easy is it for me to contact them? Maybe I want to get some subject matter expertise, but they don't really have a portfolio. They don't have any white papers. They don't have any customer testimonials. So try to understand how people come to you, what they look to you for, and in the offline world, kind of that sales process, or that procurement process. What's important to people? Is it that trust? Is it expertise? Is it understanding how easy it is that your service is? Like that needs to translate to your website. So very clearly direct folks, and those can be visual cues, big buttons, clear navigation, simple navigation. Understand what do you want them to do when they get to your site. I like to ask people, what's the analog equivalent? All right. If you want people to actually use your website, what is this replacing? Is this replacing a helpline? Is it replacing a fax machine? Is it replacing a Yellow Pages ad? What's the analog equivalent to what you're doing, right? Can the website solve a pain point, or use an existing tool to direct people to a digital way to solve a problem that you used to solve in an analog way, right? Maybe that's an FAQ, a support ticket system. Maybe it's chat support. Maybe it's easier shopping. Maybe it's vetting their culture. Maybe it's a hiring process. What's the analog equivalent that you're asking your website to kind of take on? And I think most importantly, there's this idea of friction, right? Does your website reduce friction for your customer or for your potential customer? And what I mean by friction is like, how hard is it to do something? How hard is it for me to get to where I need to go? So a couple of examples of reduced friction. One that always comes to mind in the analog versus digital world for me is taxis versus Uber. Think about the way that we used to hail taxis, which we would go out to the curb and we would stand there with our arm in the air and we would hope that a taxi would stop for us, and then we'd get into that taxi. They'd ask where we want to go. We give them the destination. They drive us there. We don't really know what the fare is going to be. We pay, we tip, and we get out. That's been replaced by a much more frictionless system when it comes to Uber, right? You download the app. It has your payment method right in the app already. You push a magic button. A relatively clean car shows up. They know exactly where you're going to go. You know exactly what you're going to pay. It is frictionless. That's to say nothing about Uber. I actually don't think they're a very good company, but it's a great illustration of friction. So a lot of people use Twitter to reduce the friction of their support, right? Instead of calling and waiting on hold, can I use Twitter to use support? So can your website reduce friction in some way? And for a lot of people, that's going to be it might be finding spec sheets for products. It might be finding testimonials, downloadable contracts. There's lots of different things that you can do to reduce friction via a website that are very, very simple. I think a lot about service providers, doctors' offices, how much time that you spend filling out forms, before as you're sitting in the waiting room, right? Why can't I just get those forms ahead of time on the website, print them out, fill them out, and have them ready? How can you reduce friction? The more that you can reduce friction, the more valuable your web property is going to be, the more people are going to use it and value it. Now let's get into how. So this is maybe some of the more technical part of the webinar, right? So number one question, are you going to hire someone to do this, or are you going to do it yourself? That's a big
Mom,
big
我
decision.
给你看，我给你看。
All
我 给你看。 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 我 给你看。
All Everybody okay? Okay, we still good? Cool. Sorry, got a little background noise there. Are you going to hire or are you going to DIY it? Right. So I'm going to give you one piece of advice. You can DIY it. You can hire someone to do it, but don't hire cousin Timmy to do it. Cousin Timmy has been like this amalgamation of the amateur web developer that I've come up against when I work with clients. Sometimes it's too many businesses don't treat their brand with enough caution, where they outsource the web project to their cousin Timmy or their niece or their nephew, even though they may be incredibly technical, understand, if we go back to the beginning of this, that your website really is the first impression that customers are going to have for you on the World Wide Web. And so whether you're going to hire or do it yourself, just be conscious of the fact that you want to hire someone that has a little bit of experience, or you want to have a little bit of experience going into this, right? So if you're going to if you want to give a family member, a friend, someone that doesn't have a lot of experience, a shot at a project such as this, my suggestion would be to build out a test site, to build out a campaign, a proof of concept, but don't just hand over what I think is a very valuable piece of digital real estate to someone that maybe hasn't done this before. Okay. If you're going to hire someone, make sure that they're showing their work. They should have a portfolio of current sites that they've worked on in the past 12 months, 24 months. And there's a million freelancers out there. Many of them very, very good. Agencies are wonderful to work with, but you're going to want to have a portfolio of work that you can look at to see if that designer, that developer understands, has a visual aesthetic that you like, has the functional capability to make sure the functionality that you need they can build, and should present themselves with a degree of professionalism. So you should really ask for a portfolio, but also, in my opinion, ask for a process. How long do they believe this project is going to be? What are their milestones? Are there previous clients that you might be able to reach out to get some feedback on how that project went? They should be showing their work, and you should be doing due diligence as well. So let's dig into some of the big platforms. All right, if we're looking at some of these, I'm going to segment them into a couple of groups. So let's take Wix and Squarespace. They're kind of the big DIY platforms out there, and some of you may have used these already. And I'm basically going to give you what I view as the pluses and minuses of all these platforms, right? So Wix and Squarespace, they're cheap, right? It's a subscription platform. You're going to run anywhere from between $20-$25 a month up to $50 a month, and that's it gives you everything that you need. It gives you the hosting. It's what keeps your website on the internet. It's going to give you access in many cases to stock imagery, which is very important, or imagery if you don't have it already. It's going to give you all kind of the tools for some basic commerce and contact forms, and it really truly is a website platform development in a box. And I think that's wonderful for folks that are doing DIY projects. Great templates to work with. So if you don't have a really complex website, I think these are things that you may want to consider. Tons of stuff for free, and a lot of freelancers. Some agencies will also use these platforms if you request them. So and like I said, subscription. That's also for me the downside, which is that once you stop paying that monthly fee for that website goes away. Like, you're using their platform for your brand, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's I feel like it's kind of the same discussion around just being beholden to a tool that you don't own. So I think this is a great place to start for DIY projects. But understand that, if you decide you don't want to use Squarespace anymore, you can't go take that site with you to another platform. That is a Squarespace site. Same thing with Wix. Last thing I'll cover here on the bottom, responsive enabled. What I mean by responsive is that website, it's one version of the website that kind of remakes itself depending on the screen size. So, you have your mobile version of the site for a phone, your tablet version, your desktop version. That's responsive web design. So it's not a different mobile website. It's just the website reconfigures itself based on screen size. Those are all kind of baked into these DIY platforms. And for me, if you don't have a responsive website in 2020, you might as well not have a website at all. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on WordPress. This is where I spend most of my development time. I will admit I have a bias towards WordPress. I've built probably 150 sites in WordPress over the years. It's a free and open source platform, which means you can download that platform for free and you can build out your website. It is free and readily available, infinitely customizable. You can, if you can program, or you can really learn some of the codecs, or or plug into some of the more automated tools. You can really do anything you want to do with the WordPress platform. You do have to figure out your own hosting, which you're basically renting some server space to keep that website online. So hosting is not typically included. It is the largest platform in terms of websites being used. It's some giant portion of the web, but it does require some maintenance. You need to kind of keep the software version current. You'll have to update plugins, which are different feature sets that you plug in. So it is absolutely not a set and forget it. It is a secure platform as long as you maintain some basic security protocols and updates. And it has a giant developer network. So I think most freelancers and agencies that you talk to are probably going to build in WordPress. So, and the other thing that's not listed here that I like about them is, let's say you're unhappy with your web host, host one. You can take the files and the database that drive the WordPress site. You can download it. You can move it to another server. So it is transplantable. So I really do like WordPress. Great commerce solutions too for WordPress. But if you're strictly commerce, if what you want your customer to do is to buy something, you may want to consider Shopify or Square. So if you already run a point of sale system, both of these would integrate with your point of sale system. You know, coffee shops, retail, those kinds of things. Again, it's subscription. It's on a platform. So when you decide you don't want to use this anymore, you're going to lose what you put into it. But it's a very robust, easy to use platform. And if you're a company that is trying to sell a product, specifically if you have to ship it, I highly recommend Shopify, and Square is catching up because you can get some. Shopify is a web store, and Square, which governs your point of sale systems, has a website product that kind of comes baked in with it. So both of these things are pretty turnkey, great templates, and easy to use. So if you're going all in on commerce, I would highly recommend you take a look at Shopify and Square. Let's talk about budgets. This is a question that I get a lot. What is your budget? And what is a good budget for a website? I have no idea. I have to be honest. It all depends on the scope. I will say that, I think I would my spidey sense goes off when someone says, "Well, I got a quote for $250 for a website from a freelancer." To me, that I get a little bit nervous about that. I can just tell you, for opening the kimono here, I charge typically I do most websites around $1,500 to $2,000 as a basic site that I use, but I'm working on a couple projects where, the budget for those projects are around $8,000. So it can really vary depending on what you want to do. So is it an informational site or is it a commerce site, right? Are you B2B? Are you B2C? What do you need that user to be able to do? That's going to have a large impact on what your budget should be. And the importance of visuals is going to be something that I'll come to in just a second. One thing I do want to mention is when you talk about capability in budgets, you want a customer to be able to book an appointment. You want a customer to be able to purchase something. My advice to you is don't reinvent the wheel. Look at third-party providers that have either services that would plug into your website or things that you can kind of drop in that would be much cheaper than trying to build it from scratch. So as an example, entrepreneurs that want to book time with me at ThINCubator, we had a system on our website that you could book, and it synced with our Google calendars, and it did a pretty good job, but there was some friction. And we have moved since to a service that still works on our website. It integrates with it, but it's called Calendly. And if it's like for $15 a month, it's just bulletproof. It just does such a better job than anything we could have built. And so for us, it's really important to first try to look for a third-party solution that we can integrate rather than reinventing the wheel. That's going to help your budgets a lot too. Even though you might be on a monthly cost or a retainer for some of these third-party services, it might be worth spending $12 to $15 a month as opposed to $500 to $700 to have something custom built. So don't reinvent the wheel if you can avoid it. Um, if your website's like baking a cake, right? For the bakers, I'm not a baker out there, right? But this is an analogy that seems to work for folks that I work with. Um, you have ingredients for the cake, right? You have to organize those ingredients in a particular order to have the cake turn out right. And so if you're working with a designer, a freelancer, I think it's really important to understand what your ingredients are. And here's some of your ingredients: domain name, sample sites. What sites do you like visually? What can you show someone that you like? Your identity. Sorry, I went a little fast here. Um, color palettes. Do you have product photos, your shipping rates, testimonials, copy, photography? If you have to prioritize through all these ingredients in terms of what could you pay to have done really well, my advice to you is to start with prioritizing photography. Uh, we are a visual culture, and having good photos can make a mediocre website look much better. And terrible photos can make a great website look really bad. So I would really prioritize photography, and whether that's hiring a professional photographer or having a pretty stock budget. I think, to me, if I had to spend extra money, it would be on photography. Um, Other things that I guess number two and three would be an identity. Make sure you have a visual identity. That's a logo and a color scheme, that is uniquely you. And maybe you have that on your business cards already. But if you don't, an identity is really going to help. And if you have some budget, you might want to look at hiring a copywriter or an editor to help you get the copy in the vernacular of the customer that you are trying to reach. So understand all of your ingredients, and you as the client or you as the DIYer are going to make the process so much easier on whoever you're working with if all of these things are created well ahead of time before development starts, and if they're organized in a way that's easy for someone to understand. Um, I have been through processes with clients where they want to see a design first, which I totally understand, but the design is um, uh, based on an assumption that there's plenty of copy, plenty of words on that page. So these photos flow nicely around them. And then when I get the copy, it's like two sentences. It screws up the whole design. So my advice to people is really try to get your ingredients in line before you start work with anyone. Again, on a limited budget, I think you prioritize identity and photography for sure. Some other must-haves, and then I will wrap things up and take some questions. In addition to, so some must-haves to if you're working with someone, or whether or not you're working with someone, I guess, is I would highly recommend you get your Google business listing, claim it, and make it current. So you can do that at google.com/business. And all that really means it's Google's phone book, Yellow Pages, right? Like when you search, particularly on a mobile device, it takes location into consideration. And you'll notice that sometimes what you'll see at the beginning of the search results are maps and listings. Those are Google business listings that are being prioritized. It helps you with SEO. You can claim it very, very simply, and you can put in basic things like hours of operation, contact information. There's lots of things that you can do, photos. And so you can kind of take a little bit of control of your brand, even if you don't have a website up right now. An easy thing you can do in about an hour is get your Google business listing up to date. So definitely check out google.com/business. Another must-have is responsive web design, and I alluded to this earlier. Your site needs to work on a large screen desktop like an iMac, and it's got to work on a phone. And if you're an analytics person, if you look at your Google Analytics, you can probably get a sense of today how many people are visiting on a mobile device, a tablet or a phone. And depending on your industry, it might be over 50%. So that site needs to look good on all these different devices. So make sure, whether you're hiring someone, that you design with responsive web design in mind. Get the user to where they need to go in less than 3 clicks. And think about your own behavior. Think about how much time you spend on a phone browsing the web versus a desktop, and I guess how short our attention spans are for mobile browsing. One of the things I've been trying to do is, in particular when I'm working with clients where mobile is very prominent, is we talk about the mobile design of the website first, rather than the notebook and desktop version of the site. We're designing first for mobile just because so much of our traffic is coming there. Let's create an awesome mobile experience, and as that expands, let's create a more visually pleasing experience that works on a desktop. But functionally on mobile, we want this to be really, really, really tight. And another must-have is an SSL. That sounds for secure socket layer. Sorry, secure socket layer. And so basically, what you'll see if you go to your browser, you'll see a little lock up on the top. That means that website is communicating securely. They're using HTTPS instead of HTTP. From a technical perspective, we care about privacy and security, right? We all should be caring about privacy and security. But one of the other things that's happening, you may have noticed this, particularly if you use the Chrome web browser and you go to a site that is not using an SSL, you'll get like a page that says, this site may not be secure, right? Are you sure you wish to continue? That doesn't mean that the site's been hacked. It just means that Chrome is flagging it as a non-secure site because it doesn't have an SSL. So a lot of times people just leave. And so if you don't have an SSL, get one. They're cheap. Many of the DIY platforms come with one baked in for free as part of their fee. If you're on your own hosting platform, some of them come with them and some of them don't. They run anywhere between $39 and $79 per year per domain, and that's going to be just something that I believe you really need to have on your site. At the end of the day, right? Do you look professional? Is your website, is the digital representation of your company something that you're proud of, or is it something that you're really not proud of? I shouldn't say do you look professional. Do you look like you? I'm not a shirt and tie guy, as you probably can tell, but I'm proud of the way that the Rust Belt startup site looks. It reflects me. And ultimately, can I trust you? Right? We are in the trust business. I don't care what industry you're in. We are in the trust business. Does your website convey trust, or does it leave people feeling like I can't trust you? So at the bare minimum, if we get rid of everything else and the complexity and the functionality and reducing friction, are you conveying trust? And I think if you take nothing else from this this presentation today, I hope that you kind of do an audit of your online platform's website, social. Is it conveying trust? Is it telling the story that you want to tell? And you'll have a copy of this webinar after, I believe, and I wanted to leave you with some additional resources and tools. These are some that I use. Themeforest.net is a great WordPress repository for themes and plugins and things that you don't have to, you normally pay a developer a lot to build them. You can just plug them in. It's a fantastic resource that I use a lot because it allows me to keep budgets down for clients that I work with, and folks that are in the DIY game. It's a much easier way to get some pretty awesome functionality integrated into their website on the cheap. I mentioned Calendly before. This is a great booking integration. If you're someone that needs people to schedule time with you, I highly, highly, highly recommend Calendly. If you're not going to be able to hire a photographer, Adobe Stock Imagery, or there's a lot of them out there that are just membership based. That have great libraries of wonderful images that you can use for a monthly fee where you get a certain amount of downloads. Where do you start if you're looking for a designer and artist? You might want to start at Fiverr, fivrr.com. You can basically, or Elance or Upwork.com. You can put together a proposal and a project scope and a proposed budget and put it up there, and people will respond to you from all over the world. And you can conduct interviews over Skype, and you can make the determination of who is the right freelancer for you. So there's no shortage of folks that can do a good job for you. Again, Google My Business are your business resources for your listings. And Google Webmaster Tools is something that you should have access to if you do not already. So that is something that will allow you to kind of get a top level view of where your site is ranking or what keywords your site is ranking for. Are there any malware or security issues on the site? And you can tie your Google Analytics or AdWords into it. So you can kind of get a robust picture of how Google sees your site. And if you're someone that's relying on SEO or people coming from search, it's a really great tool that you can have. It's all free. You just have to verify your domain. There's some technical stuff involved with it, but nothing that you can't handle with a little bit of research or a little bit of help from your web person, your IT person. With that, here's my contact info. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can, and I hope I delivered some value to you all today. But please feel free to reach out with anything, and I'll be happy to do my best to get in touch. ThINCubator is really the consulting aspect. If you are in the Mohawk Valley, we would love to help you try to spin up that business. Myself and my colleague Stacy, we do this all day, every day, and we love it. And if you want to talk other website stuff or check out the podcast, rustbeltstartup.com.
All right, thank you, Ryan. I'm just going to read off some of the questions that are in the chat. So if you have any questions, type them in the chat box or the Q&A. So the first question is, what type of site features are most costly?
Oh, sure. So I think anything that's going to involve user accounts, if you know, or when you start getting into collecting and storing personal information, you're going to start getting pricey, depending on what you want people to do. You know, there's a misnomer that commerce is really expensive. It's not. But I do think that you need to understand, does your business model work with e-commerce? So, you know, you're going to pay a Stripe or a Square, 2.9% plus 30 cents per transaction. And where I find people get hung up with in terms of features or things that are expensive or where it breaks the business model is, let's say I'm a restaurant and I'm selling salsa online. Well, the jar of salsa might be $6, but it's $8 to ship it. And so without understanding, kind of what all the steps are, that can get pretty complicated. Other features that get really expensive are interactive graphical elements. So if you need some kind of, really really dense Google Map integration where I can search a directory, like those things can get kind of expensive. I did a project a few years ago where I built a site for this is true. I didn't know this existed. There are a lot of people that are blind marathon runners, and it was a site where we connected blind marathon runners with blind trainers, and we had to use all kinds of location-based data, and we had to make the site accessible for folks that are blind. And I hadn't done that before, and that was a big leap.
All right, next question. So can you use plugins for e-commerce on a WordPress site?
Absolutely. I'll tell you the big one that I use religiously is WooCommerce, WOO Commerce. It's free. The core is free, and then if you want to customize things like customizing checkout fields or things like that, they make paid plugins, so it's kind of a freemium model. But WooCommerce is a fantastic commerce platform for WordPress. I would highly recommend it.
How much do you usually need to pay for website maintenance?
Oh, great question. It depends on what you need maintained. So, here's the honest answer. If you're going to pay someone to, like, I would recommend if you're paying someone to host it, they should have a bare bones maintenance package in place. I've worked for companies and have hosted sites on my own where that hosting rate, that maintenance rate is anywhere between, literally $25 a month on the cheap end. It's over $100 a month. If you're someone that is just looking for basic kind of keeping WordPress up to date, not a lot of changes, just kind of making sure that it's secure and the wheels aren't falling off, I just don't think you should pay much more than 25 or $50 a month. if you're someone that really has dynamic content all the time that needs to be updated and changed, is customer support going through the website? Like, you really got to have a conversation with your developer to figure out, what are they responsible for, or your maintenance person, what are they responsible for, and how many hours, or just the description of what they're responsible for, and then what are you responsible for as a client. So that's a hard one to answer, but I do not think it should be, unless you're really changing things all the time. I don't think it should be much more than $50 to $100 a month. And by the way, if it's $50 to $100 a month, you better be doing commerce. That website better be generating income or leads or job prospects. If it's an informational site, my advice is get a great backup plugin. Make sure that backup is included in your hosting, and if something goes wrong, you just wipe it and re-upload the site.
What's the maximum percentage of your website that should be ads or marketing?
None. None. People hate ads. I hate ads. People run ad blockers. Let's take a step back here. What's the purpose of the marketing? Is the purpose of the marketing like affiliate links? Is it and what kind of marketing, right? Is it content marketing where you might be like an influencer and you're writing product reviews, which is marketing. You disclose what it is. But if we're talking about banner ads, as little as possible. I mean, look, when you add Google Ad Network banner ads, the cost, you got to do a cost benefit analysis of like, what's the potential revenue that I'm going to get from these ads versus what's the amount of angst that I'm generating by showing pop-up ads, banner ads, things like that. It, the ad model is not a good one when it comes to display ads. I mean, and again, when in doubt, think about your own user behavior. When you go to a website, do you ever go, "Oh my gosh, there's so many ads. I just love looking at these ads," or do you get really angry at it? Right. So I think you got to understand your customer, but understand that most websites are there to sell you something. They're there to get you to make a call, to make a purchase, to convey trust. That's what a lot of purposes. But if you're talking about third-party web ads, I would minimize that as much as humanly possible.
How do you increase traffic to your site?
Great question. By the way, I just saw. Oh, never mind. I was seeing stuff pop up in the chat. Uh, how do you increase traffic to your website? Um, I'm going to give you 2 to 3 main ways to do it. And I am not an SEO person, okay? But here's the stuff that's kind of still tried and true. Number one is write useful keyword rich content. So maybe that's a blog, maybe that's having a news page that actually gets updated, on a monthly basis. Creating content that has value to people. That's number one. Continuously creating content um, because you're going to have more stuff there. The second way is, which is really the best way, is to get link backs. So there's an entire business of people that all they do is they sell link backs to websites, and I don't like this practice, so I don't recommend it. But I do think, you know, um, if you have happy customers, if you have partners, and they would provide a link back to your website based on a keyword, that's very valuable because Google looks for authority as part of their algorithm. So the more, if you're writing about entrepreneurship, right? And I've got 10, 100, 1,000 websites pointing back to my website where the hyperlink is not Rust Belt Startup, the hyperlink is entrepreneurship, but it links to Rust Belt Startup. Google is going to go, oh, there's some authority there. So link backs, creating content, and well, I was going to say and frequency of updating. There's some other little things that you can do. There's some things that you can do that will just get you penalized, right? And that's not having an SSL. That's duplicating content. That's plagiarizing content. There's a lot of those kinds of things. But the biggest thing is get some link backs. And also if you truly treat it as your home base, some of the things that you may want to consider are if you're if you have stuff like a podcast, if you have social media posts, LinkedIn articles, you know, post a good chunk of it. And then for folks to read more, they got to go to your website.
Can you please address ADA compliance?
Oh yeah. So the short answer is yes and no. Um, if this is something where it's more, it's like the bigger, it's important, but is it a thing that I would get go into panic mode over right now? No, there's a few things that you can do that that are easy that will get you most of the way there, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer here, but those things are when you upload an image, you know, there's these tags that go along with your images. So I'm just using WordPress as an example, where that image has a file name, right? But there's a title tag or an alt tag. Type in what that image is. And so what that's going to do is if someone's using a screen reader or some kind of ADA software where they can't visually see the web page, it will read those title tags so I can get a sense of what is on that page. Use high contrast ratios, black and white, like stuff that's going to really be visually easy to read. Use big enough fonts. And you know, I think one of the biggest things you can do for ADA compliance is to make contacting you easy and make people feel like they can reach out to you with any questions. So I'm not going to go into the technical ends of it, but like especially from an image perspective, make sure your images have a title tag and alt tags. That's also going to help you with SEO. I'm going to give a quick shout out to Hugo, who sent me a message privately. Said, "How much does Miller Beer pay you to have their neon sign in the background?" Zero, Hugo. Zero.
Should capability statements be included on the site?
Can you go in? I'm going to say, can you go into a little bit more detail? Is capability statement like what do we do?
Yes, it's a one-page marketing tool that we recommend that MWBEs use for just showing more information about their business, company data, contact, differentiators, past projects, and it's a one-page marketing tool that they use to market themselves to state agencies and authorities.
So let me throw it back at you. I think so. The answer is yes, and the more complex answer is it sounds like that capability statement is really a website one-sheeter, right? That sounds to me like it's a landing page. And so if that is your primary tool of marketing, instead of maybe just upload, you might want to have that available as a PDF because if you're going after a particular kind of customer where that's what they're used to is a downloadable PDF, by all means put it up there. But if that is really the distillation of all of the things that you do, your capabilities, your services, your testimonials, that is a great document that I think could serve as you know the skeleton for your website, right? Why can't you just take that and now you've got a lot of good copy that you can utilize? So the short answer is yeah, and I think if you've got one of those already, you're well on your way.
All right, I'm just pulling up the next question. We're getting some questions about providing the recording and presentation. We will be providing that once it's made available. So I'll be sending that out to everyone either by the end of the day today or tomorrow morning.
Someone hit me direct. They said, what is the eye-catching element in the website?" I don't know. To think it varies, right? I'm a big fan of the hero, what we call the hero images, like, and you'll see that on sites that I design. There's like a big image across the top, um, but context is important. You know, that first we used to call it above the fold, right? Like, what do you see on that screen when you first load it without scrolling? Should clearly articulate a visual style and just put people let people know they're in the right place.
What's the average time for creating a website?
Great question, man. Um, I can give you my I'll put my freelancer hat on and I'll put my agency hat on. If I put my freelancer hat on, I typically tell people, and I'm going to say like an informational perspective, right? So this is going to be a site that's 4 to 5 pages, very informational in nature, not a ton of custom commerce capabilities and stuff like that. I usually tell people about 6 weeks from the time where all the ingredients are received, right? The biggest thing in getting a website live, and I'm going through it with 2 clients right now, is that everyone's in a rush to get started, and no one knows your business better than you do. And so in a lot of cases, it's hurry up and wait, where I wasn't provided all the ingredients that I need to make this thing go. And that's the thing that drags on. So usually I'm starting to get to the point where with clients, I'm really trying not to start the project until I have all the ingredients so I know what I'm looking at. But usually I've turned projects around in 3 weeks. I've turned projects around. I typically tell people 6 to 8 weeks if you've got all the ingredients. If you got custom programming involved, I've been on projects that have been 6 months. Um, but the best thing that you can do as a client is to upfront be able to show your developer that you've done your due diligence, that you understand the structure of what you want, and you've done the due diligence to actually get as much of the photography and the copy done as you possibly can. The other thing that's really useful that minimizes time, design changes kill projects. If you can provide your designer, or even if you're doing a DIY thing, um, with 3 to 5 websites that you just visually love. And it might not doesn't have to be in your industry, but try to understand what it is that you love about these visually. That's going to really cut out a lot of time. And a lot of times it's going to cut out a lot of budget because you don't have so many revisions.
I'm getting a couple inquiries about the one-page capability statement that I mentioned. Just send, so you can send me over an email. I'll type it in the chat, and I will provide you the our template for a capability statement.
I'm scrolling through some of these questions too. Oh, have not heard very good things regarding Upwork. Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. All these are mixed bags, right? So, if I could, is it okay if I take this question, Caitlin? Because this is something
Oh
that
yeah,
was
no
addressed
problem.
in the presentation. With any of these, Upwork, Fiverr, it is a mixed bag, and I think working with technical professionals can be difficult. So my recommendation is, whenever you can, if you're working with any of these sites, in addition to trying to vet the portfolio, when you're talking about your project, try to break it into milestones where those milestones are tied to payments. So, for example, like everyone's going to probably request a deposit, right? But I'm not going to really, milestone one might be, I'm going to see a proof of a design, and then milestone one gets paid out. Milestone two might get paid out when the client approves, a coded up and functioning homepage and some page template. I'm making this up, but like it's a way to hedge against just putting. I would not recommend that you just work with someone that asks you to pay up front for the project. To me, that's a red flag. Um, and I also probably wouldn't recommend working with someone that just says pay me when I'm done, because that's probably gonna be the last thing that they're concerned about. So with any of these platforms, I think reviews are your friends. And if you're working with someone, you may want to ask if you could speak to one of their previous clients, or spend 10 minutes interviewing them on Skype. I've done that before. Um, so yeah, all of these sites are a mixed bag. So I think it really becomes about how do you hedge your bets, to make sure that you get what you want. Um, yeah, not easy. Is it legal to copy and paste from one website to another? I'm going to answer that one. If you own it, yes. If you don't own it, no. You can. So here's a better way to do that. Here's a better way to do that. If there's stuff that you want to include from a website that is not yours, my recommendation is to link to it. Create a quote, link to it.
I think we have time for one more question. I have one right here. Is it important to have a website hosted and maintained monthly maintenance by the same company?
No. And in fact, I think you're gonna have a hard time. I shouldn't say you're gonna have a hard time finding that, but like, I host for probably a dozen clients of sites that I've built. So I like that. I like hosting it because I know I'm maintaining my I'm maintaining that server, and I know those sites inside and out because I built them. So that's really handy. But understand that there's not a server sitting in my house that has all the websites on them. So I basically it's a tiered system, right? Like I lease a server and bandwidth from another company in a data center. So I don't think it's absolutely critical to have all that be in the same spot. But I think the most critical thing is that you as a client own your domain name. That's a mistake that I see a lot of times with folks is they work with their web developer and the web developer buys the domain name in their name, right? And then if they forget to pay the bill or they go dark for some reason or they go out of business, that domain name it's expired and now you got a big problem. So make sure that you own your domain name and that you as a client at least know where the website is being hosted. Even just ask that question. If there's one more I can take just because this was pretty interesting. You mentioned a podcast is useful. How to create one? How much could that cost? I'm gonna give you the 30-second answer. The cost is nothing. If you want to dip your toe in, there's a great platform called Anchor, ANCHOR.FM. That's an app and it's free, and you can create a podcast from your iPhone or Android device, and they will take care of all that distribution to the different stores. If you want to go deeper on that, so Anchor's great. Some more limited capabilities. Again, it's like anything else. If you want to get under the hood and really tweak things to exactly the way you want it, you're gonna have to learn how to edit audio, and you're gonna have to learn how to do audio hosting. SoundCloud is another great provider. That's who I use. But I think podcasts right now, we're in the golden age of podcasting. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody's got a podcast, and that's a good thing. It's a bad thing. But I think even just dipping your toe into that is it may be useful. But remember, come back to the website stuff. Like, why are you doing it? Like, who cares if you have a podcast? Who's this for? And are you providing useful information to folks that might be listening?
Great. I'm just going to get into some closing remarks. I want to thank Ryan for joining us today and for the insightful webinar. A couple of quick reminders. The PowerPoint presentation and recording will be emailed to everyone. Our next webinar will be Tuesday, July 14th, and called Navigating Contracting Opportunities on the New York State Contract Reporter. And please fill out the short survey and let us know how we did. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Ryan.